Good afternoon. Today's March 26th. This is a work session of the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. Today, we're going to take up four bills. With us today is Committee Counsel Lindsay Rowe. We have some people here to testify on House Bill 738. So Lindsay, why don't we go ahead and start with that one so our guests can move along?
So, as originally introduced, this bill expands the requirements for two annual reports prepared by the Department of Information Technology, also known as DOIT, about the Information Technology Investment Fund and projects that are funded through the fund. I circulated amendments via a reprint to the Senate cross file on the bill, which is Senate Bill 705, that generally establish within DOIT a centralized information technology project management entity to serve as managers of information technology projects. So I'm going to walk through the reprint extensively to go through all of the changes that are made. So the amendments clarify that a unit may not purchase, lease, contract for, or rent an information technology service or product unless it's consistent with the master plan. Requires DOIT rather than DGS, but in consultation with DGS to assess the procurement process for IT projects. This is that just putting the responsibility on DOIT rather than DGS, and requires them to do this themselves rather than hire a consultant. Authorizes the Secretary of DOIT to delegate accountability for an implementation of an IT project or product to the head of another unit if the Secretary determines the unit has the internal capacity to adequately support the project, program management, and responsibility over program activities. The managing unit sends notice of project information to BPW and the LPC within 30 days of awarding a work order, and the unit agrees to report to DOIT every 3 months on the project status. Authorizes the Secretary to revoke the delegation of authority if the unit no longer has the capacity or the unit fails to file a required report. Requires the Secretary of DBM to withhold project funds on the recommendation of the Secretary of DOIT, and authorizes the Secretary of DBM to release the funds, again at the direction of the Secretary of DOIT. Within 30 days after funding is withheld, DOIT must report on the purpose of the withholding to the Governor, General Assembly committees, and the Joint Committee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotechnology. This Secretary of DOIT may recommend that funding withheld be reallocated to other expenses of the Information Technology Investment Fund, and the Secretary of DBM may follow that recommendation. If the reallocated funds exceed $500,000, the Secretary of DOIT, in consultation with the Secretary of DBM, must submit a proposal to the LPC for a 60-day review and comment period. The amendments repeal the Modernized Maryland Commission and instead requires DOIT to develop standards for identifying legacy systems, adopt an information technology investment maturity model, and develop a state modernization plan. These had been commission responsibilities. Repeals the November 1st report from DOIT on the Information Technology Investment Fund and alters the content of the January 15th report on the fund, including specifying that the report is not subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act. Requires DOIT to publish and maintain a publicly available project and portfolio dashboard on its website and sets requirements for the dashboard, and authorizes DOIT to redact specific risks from the dashboard if it determines that public sharing of the information would pose a risk to the project. But if redacted, that information shall be shared with LPC, and that information is not subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act. Establishes the Office of Digital Experience to provide oversight, leadership, intervention, and strategic modernization for state IT projects and direct the development of modernized systems. Establishes that procurements by the office are not generally subject to the state procurement law, with the exception of the requirement for exempt units to adopt written policies and procedures for procurements, and it still applies, the MBE requirements still apply. Requires the office to establish a technical procurement team and a team to assist units with IT project brainstorming. Authorizes staffing for the office, including authorizing the Secretary of DBM to reduce existing augmentation contracts and reallocate up to 10% of the funds in the Information Technology Investment Fund to meet the requirements of the office. Establishes the Maryland Digital Service Unit to collaborate with and assist units to support improved service delivery to state residents and agency staff. Establishes the Major Information Technology Development Project Oversight Division in the office to adopt standards for MITDPs and expedited projects, monitor performance, and provide expertise, support, and intervention as necessary. Requires Do It to report twice annually, beginning December 31st, 2025, to the Budget and Taxation and HGO committees on any projects undertaken under a master contract for statewide agile teams approved by BPW in fiscal year 2025. Establishes the Information Technology Advisory Board to advise the LPC and to serve as an expert advisory entity to the General Assembly and review any state reports or other available information regarding existing IT projects. Authorizes the governor to meet the requirements of the bill to transfer to the Maryland Office of Digital Experience unexpended appropriations to do it for staff augmentation contracts and up to 20% of the balance in the Information Technology Investment Fund. Authorizes the governor to transfer up to 50 positions, requires each unit with an MITDP in fiscal 2026 to fill at least one existing vacancy or designate one existing employee to staff the unit while serving as an employee of Do It and member of the MITDP team for the unit, and requires Do It in fiscal 2026 to work with units to require one productivity suite and may provide specific exemptions to that requirement to meet the unit's unique needs. So that's the description of the amendments. I will say I noted a couple of just very technical, like grammatical changes to the reprint that I sent out earlier. This is just to standardize the terminology for a major information technology development project. Throughout the bill, there were a couple places where that term was not used when it should have been, and then cross-references to the Public Information Act.
Okay, thank you. Will someone please move the amendments?
Move the amendments. It's Delegate
Second.
Kaiser.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second on the amendments. Delegate Kaiser, this is going to be a long one to floor lead. So this was a lot of amendments, so I assume you have worked out any issues with all the stakeholders?
Not entirely, and I'll give you some of that story as I am now walking over to the Senate, which is why I turned my camera off.
Mhm.
So I think everyone knows the challenges that we've had for many years in managing our IT projects and being told for the last few years that no one's really in charge.
Mhm.
And we heard that from Do It, and we heard that from the agencies. The agencies don't have the technical expertise. We've had things like Maryland Think go 400 million over budget, and just all of these problems. And then the audit report for Do It this last fall was really bad. And it's unclear if any improvements have been made in that process. So this bill started out as a reporting and as a dashboard to say, let's put the information in clear and concise language that smart, non-technical people, AKA most members of the General Assembly, could read and understand and know if something's going on, and that we don't ever get ourselves in a situation again where we're hundreds of millions behind budget and we get the wrong product and there's mistakes and problems. So this bill has been worked on by a lot of smarter people than me. I'm grateful that we have the head of DLS with us in this meeting to explain some of the technical things. I think you will hear from Do It, Mr. Chair, that they don't want to do all the things that we have in this bill, but in so many ways, this bill has been amended to address and do almost everything they were asking for in an alternative legislation. It seems to be, I don't know, wording issue or some other such thing. Unfortunately, I think I have the last bill in finance today, and I'm about to enter their room in about a minute.
Yeah.
So I am going to have to leave it to Ms. Gruber for her expertise.
Okay, I'm in the same situation in budget and tax. So, Vicky, please go
Yes.
ahead.
I mean, I think Ann's description is accurate. And I don't want to speak for the department because they're on the line. They are planning a lot of overhauls, and the bill, was intended to support what they were planning to do. I know it's always concerning to an agency when things get codified, when they're not totally sure how things are going to work out. But on the other hand, from the legislative perspective, I know you all want that certainty of, okay, this is how things are going to change, and because administrations change and people change. And we want that certainty of what you're saying will be a better way to do things, and the certainty of that. And a lot of the language that maybe is raising concerns in terms of, because it's intended to be budget neutral, and taking there's $4.3 million in the budget right now to pay vendors to do project management. And the bill allows those funds to go to do it for that purpose, rather than hiring vendors who maybe don't have the same concerns about the state budget. And maybe it's the best way to say it. And then allowing some of the Information Technology Investment Fund to be used for these new ideas and ways of doing things that the department is saying they would like to do. And that is the intent. And, you know, I know, well, I'll let them speak for themselves, but as I understand it, the concerns are, can't we just have a, you know, do a work group, not put it in statute? But I'm not, what I've gathered is concern from members like Delegate Kaiser, who had to get off, is how much longer, like, do we let this go on and find out afterwards that something went terribly wrong? And how do we make, whether it's Do It or an agency managing a project, how do we make them accountable?
Thank you, Vicky. Patrick Mulford, would you care to weigh in?
Yeah, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I really appreciate the work that Vicky did with this. It's not easy, and we do appreciate her working with us, as well as Delegate Kaiser. Unfortunately, it just did not come together like we thought it would. We received the final draft that you all have received a few days ago. We circulated it with other agencies, and they are extremely upset by it. I have been receiving calls all yesterday. I sent Vicky DBM's concerns with the bill. We still think that there is a massive fiscal note, even with the shifting of funding that Vicky has referred to. There are just many reasons why we think pushing a bill through with this massive change this quickly just is not a good idea. One of the main reasons that I would oppose this bill and our agency opposes this bill is we're working hand in hand with the agencies to try to fix these problems right now. And unfortunately, this legislation makes it seem like Do It is trying to take over and not work with them as partners. And that is one of the main pieces of the legislation that I oppose. I would love for, if you would allow, Mr. Chair, Marcy Jacobs, who is the head of she's Deputy Secretary at Do It, as well as the Chief Digital Experience Officer. I would love for her to give her opinion on the bill as well.
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank
Marcy,
you.
go ahead.
Thanks, Patrick, and thank you for hearing us out on this. I think fundamentally, we agree with the legislature that there are significant issues with how we approach IT projects in the state. Those problems have been in place for probably 20 years. And the secretary and my team have been working for the last 2 years to make significant changes to how we work with agencies, how we think about oversight and reforming that process so that we are reinforcing the behaviors that we want to see. But it is hard to change 20 years of technical debt and to change the behaviors that, quite frankly, are reinforced through how we fund projects, how we do procurements for projects. So we have proposed a pilot effort that is already underway. We have already started rolling out the changes to oversight reform. We're meeting with the CIOs of agencies to talk them through some of these changes, to provide support for new staffing models. So there's a lot of things that are already happening. And this bill kind of forces us to go from 0 to 100. And there are a number of things in here that, quite frankly, will be very detrimental and are pushing us in the wrong direction. Pulling technology resources out of agencies and putting them in Do It and saying that technology should be solved over here is why we have gotten into this problem. Technology is the backbone of service delivery, as is policy, as is budget, as is process and talent. If we don't think about all of those things together, we will keep running into the same mistakes and the same overruns and the same problems. We have to get away from thinking of technology as implement a system to thinking about technology as deliver unemployment. What are the systems that need to support unemployment or SNAP or any of the other things that we do as a state? So pulling out one leg of that stool makes the stool fall over. That is part of what we are trying to correct right now in partnership with agencies, and there is a lot of support for the direction that we are headed.
Vicky, do you have a response?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would say about that is I don't think that's what the bill actually does. One of the things that has come up with all the issues is sort of like, and I know Do It has heard this, like the Attorney General model, to have a Do It employee embedded in agencies where they are having a major information technology project. So you have somebody, and I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for the members who had conversations about this, so I want to make that clear. But the notion was that you would have an embedded Do It employee in these agencies with these projects, so that just trying to enhance the accountability, not necessarily, and the way the bill is structured, it says that it authorizes a lot of things. It authorizes PIN transfers to Do It for these things. It authorizes procurement, independent procurement authority with the restrictions that Lindsay talked about. It authorizes the secretary work with the approval of DBM to maybe have a different salary structure than the strict salary structure that maybe doesn't fit the IT profession. And it was the way that it's drafted, I don't think it forces any of those things. It authorizes it, and Do It, and the administration could still say no.
Thank you. Delegate Hill, before I get to you, let me allow Patrick Mulford to respond.
Yeah, Vicky, I'm just concerned with the authorization language. I'm concerned that by putting that in there, the legislature and OLA will then assume that we should be doing these things. And they give us the authorization to do these things, but it seems like a half measure. And that's why we would love to have a working group
2 minutes. Thank you.
in the interim to be able to get to the full fix for these things and not just, a half measure. And that's the only way that I'll respond to the difference between authorization and forcing us to do something.
Thank you. Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks everybody for being there. And Vicky, thank you for sort of crystallizing and expressing what the legislators who've been working on this have been trying to get at. My question is, so Patrick, you gave a specific suggestion just now that you want a work group, that you have problems with authorization language. What I haven't heard, when we met with Marcy, I think you and some other people last month, Delegate Kerr, Delegate Kaiser, and myself, you all said you were doing things, and we asked you if you could send us specifically what you're already doing. And maybe I was left out, but I never got a copy of what it is that you guys are already doing that you thought were addressing the problems, because we were looking at whether those are the kinds of things that we should be putting into statute, but we never got that. And I'm hearing that you're not happy with this, but I'm not hearing line by line suggestions of what could be changed or any alternative except let's just study it some more. And I think you heard from Delegate Kaiser that we're pretty frustrated at the time. And granted, some of it precedes this administration and your being here, but we're trying to deal with this now. And this language in the bill seems to fit those needs. So I'm asking for real specific recommendations, not general, we're just not happy. Do you have any specific recommendations?
So we have shared those specific recommendations with Vicky and with Delegate Kaiser. Well, we shared them through Vicky. I don't know whether Delegate Kaiser and Senator Hester have seen them, but we have gone back and forth with Vicky on quite a few changes to this language. So yes, and we actually, while you all were on the House floor, went through line by line, and we can send you the changes that we would like to see. We have those written out in a very nice format that if that was the language that was for this bill, we would be completely behind it. There are quite a few things, including the reporting requirements. We're fairly happy with those. There are a few tweaks to those that we would like to see. We believe that the IT advisory board that's in this bill is a great idea. We think that there should be more IT subject matter expertise in the legislature. I think it would be fantastic. And there are quite a few other things in the bill that we agree with. There are just quite a few that, one, would be way too expensive to implement immediately, and two, the other agencies would not be behind. It is not just Do It. It is quite a few other agencies that I have heard from just in the last 24 hours that are very much against this rewrite.
Patrick, is what they are objecting to, are they objecting to them taking accountability for the projects?
No, I think they are objecting to, like you said, they count their pins. They hold their pins very sacred, as you know. So I think any movement of the ITIF funding that those agencies may before have been able to take advantage of, that gets moved underneath Do It in this, they are not excited about.
You mean project funding?
Yes, well, but the project funding is to ensure that we can staff some of these things that are brought up in the bill.
And again, do your suggestions or their suggestions give us specific things so we're not doing what we're doing now, which is costing us money and is inefficient, and specifically says instead of doing what the language in the amendments proposes, doing it a different way. In other words, hearing that they're upset is not helpful. If the upset doesn't come with suggestions.
Yes.
Okay. We're not going to resolve this today. We can
No.
meet again tomorrow.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
so let's go ahead and move on. I encourage people, as you are able, to talk about this, and we'll send out an email inviting you to meet with subcommittee again tomorrow.
Yeah. And all I would say at the end is I really do believe we are all well-intentioned people trying to get to the right place. And I just hope we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, these three bills by Senator Simonaire, they seemed pretty straightforward. They all concern veterans. Does anybody have any issues with any of these three bills? Does
Can I
anyone,
move
do
them for
They were all
discussion?
unanimous votes in the Senate, no
Yeah.
amendments, no opposition.
you want to move them together?
Can I move them as a calendar?
Consent calendar.
Second.
Okay,
Second, third,
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
aye.
we'll move those three along. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in committee in just a couple minutes. We're adjourned. All right. Let me see if I can get everybody on here before they.
Are we done?